morning, welcome to EMTV. Offline, online or hybrid. University education will never be the same as before Corona. The Deans of Education expect that online lectures are here to stay. Students seem to prefer them. They like the flexibility it brings, although sometimes it also brings some uncomfortable situations along.
Do you have some funny stories of difficulties that happened online?
I had a tutorial and I forgot to turn off my mic and I had a private conversation. It was quite private, like no one really should have listened to that.
And how did you attend the lecture after that conversation?
Oh, like I'm shameless, so I was like, oh well, like it happened. But like I wish it didn't, but it's fine.
I mean, you always have like the panic when the lecture room doesn't open or when you can't find the link. There's a lot of these like practicality problems that you don't really have in your life.
Sometimes people were like in their pajamas because they just rolled out of bed at 9 o'clock and they were just like, well, I'm here, but I'm not really awake. Further on, the tutor said to us, yeah, I expect you to be fully dressed and behind your desk. So that was kind of funny that everyone was just like very tired and in their PJs, yeah.
And did you wear your PJs?
No, I was always fully dressed.
Like the intimate life of professors. It's like sometimes you see their pets and like doing some weird stuff and their girlfriends or boyfriends or like, you know, it's like a whole thing that you wouldn't normally get to experience.
Here with me in the studio is Timo Zandvliet. He's a student and student member of the University Council. Also he is lecturer and winner of the university's education prize, Ana Uribe Sandoval. Welcome to you both. Timo, when we were looking to the students, how were you dressed when you were following online education? Pajamas or fully?
Most of the time I'm fully dressed. I try to at least. But if I roll out of bed a few minutes before, most of the time, then it's harder to get fully dressed.
Yes. And you're a student. Is this also what you like about online education, that you can roll out of bed and start immediately?
It is one of the advantages, although it's not the main advantage.
What is the main advantage?
For me, it is that you can follow it whenever you want to follow your lecture. So you're flexible and you have kind of autonomy over your own education. And I think that's really valuable of online education.
Anna, you're a lecturer and you won this year the education prize of the university. You swear by offline education. We will talk with this in a minute, but first, what do students think? What will education look like in the future?
What is the future of education in your opinion?
I think hybrid, to be honest, like the fact that so many people can be like getting this great education without actually being here is a huge advantage.
I think we might go back to online education for a little bit, but once Corona has been controlled, I think this should no longer be an issue.
I really hope that education will mostly remain like offline because there is obviously, I think, a huge value in interpersonal communication, and I think that really like changes like the way you approach a subject and it motivates you more.
The only advantage I could see for online education is for people who already finished a study and are working full-time and need some extra study.
It's gonna change for sure. It's the last thing to change and I think it's gonna undergo a lot of change. It's probably gonna end up being online. That's the sad truth, but let's hope we get some stuff offline.
Yes. Anna, as you see, the students are in favor of online or hybrid. Your opinion piece in Erasmus magazine made it clear you're not in favor of online education. You're a big favor of offline education. In your article, you write, the most important thing that happens at the university is not the lecture itself, but what happens around the lecture. Can you explain?
Well, I think that the idea that what we do is information transmission, it's a bit off, right? If you only want to read or get something from a book or a video, you can do it already, right? So what happens in university is the moment of discussion. What happens before the lecture when you are discussing with your colleagues what you have read, what happens after the lecture when you try to unravel what happened in that place, and especially what happens in the lecture or in the seminar, right? When you have the opportunity to discuss with your colleagues, with your teacher, about the subjects that you have there. It's not something that is static, but something that moves and actually changes. I believe that knowledge is created in the classroom. So that's why I really propose that we have to still have our own offline classes.
Yes, so offline only would be your preference.
Yes, but let's understand that there are many things that will be online. It's normal, like we do many things online. We read, from articles in the library, right? That's already online. We might see some videos. I'm a media studies scholar, so of course I have my students watch Netflix, and they don't have to be with me sitting by my side to do that, right? So there are things that we'll do online, and we keep on doing online. But the classes, the experience of the university, I do believe has to happen offline.
Yes. But Timo and the other students seem to think that a hybrid version of education will work. And we conducted a poll among students, and they, well, said the same thing. What do you think? Will hybrid be then also acceptable for you?
For me, as a lecturer, it's a bit of a nightmare, right? In the sense, let's imagine what are we talking about when we say hybrid? Is it hybrid, as Timo was saying, maybe watching the lecture at home at whatever time, or a knowledge clip and then coming to class? That's one kind of hybrid. Another kind of hybrid is having to go to the classroom and give offline education at the same time that you're trying to cater to online students. That doesn't necessarily work.
What do you think? What will education ideally look like to you?
To
Offline?
Yeah.
Yes.
For me, offline is a good choice.
And Timo, well, you're here as a student. What do you think? You hear some disadvantages of online, some advantages of offline. How do you feel?
Well, for me, there are a lot of disadvantages which were named that there are ways around. For example, I think that one-way information streams can always be online. If there's no interaction needed, why not do it online? You give way more flexibility to the students. But yeah, on the other hand, yes, there are some disadvantages of online, because having a discussion or interaction with other students is way more limited. So for example, tutorials and everything, yeah, it's better to have those offline in my opinion, but there are a lot of things which we do online, and I think we should do them online.
Anna, do you agree?
It's open to what are we talking about, right? Like, if I understand correctly from what Timo says, is this idea of the lecture, for example, being online, that it always has to be there. Look, this is not new, right? Online lectures have been there for a very long time. It's not necessarily in the case of Erasmus, but for years you have been able to watch lectures from Harvard or from different schools all over the world. Now, what actually happens is that people want to still go to those lectures because something happens in that room. Doesn't mean that every student will make the most out of it, but for some of them it's important to be there because actually being in the lecture is not only passive. All the things also happen in there.
But the fact that Erasmus is way behind compared to other universities in the Netherlands, because most of the universities have like recordings and everything online of the lectures, and Erasmus didn't have it like before Corona, and now they kind of have it, but they were kind of going back, but now they have to have everything online again because of the changing pandemic again. But are we as Erasmus then behind? Because we kind of don't have it, and now you still want everything to be offline, but other universities have also things online. So
I think we have to evaluate what as a university we want to do in the future, and also consider what do we want about those lectures. Imagine that I record a lecture today, right? Mm-hmm. And then that recording, who owns that? Who will play it? When? How long will that lecture actually be valid? Because I can record something today in media studies, for example, of dealing with journalism that in 3 months makes absolutely no sense because the examples that I'm giving are no longer valid. So I would discuss about the validity of the idea, like, yes, let's now propose to just produce 100 lectures and just keep them there and see how much that's going to be valid in the long term. And I would like to know, as a lecturer, how many years does the university can use my recordings? Because that's another story that we are maybe not discussing even yet.
But Timo, you're a second-year student.
Yes.
How many offline lectures did you enjoy here on campus?
0. Last year was my first year. Everything was online. My exams were online. Last year I haven't been to the campus once. This year I had a few tutorials on campus. So those were mandatory. I had to go to campus, but yeah, furthermore, like no lectures at all.
Did you notice the difference between your tutorials last year online and those this year offline?
Yes, I did, but it also depends on how motivated the other students are in the same tutorial. Because if they are all just sitting and passively listening, then there's not really a difference between online and having it offline.
And Anna, during Corona, well, we still noticed here in the Netherlands, it's still very much going on. Online education will be inevitable. Do you have advice for students or other lecturers, your colleagues, to get through this period?
Well, I just hope for them to be as active as possible and to know that this will pass, right? If I have to think about this as this is what it is and this is how it will continue for the rest of time, I would be a little bit demotivated. But if I think, okay, this is just something that we have to do now because it's the worst circumstance, good enough, right? Let's just live day by day on this.
So I think this will be a topic we will have many more discussions on. Well, feel free to read Erasmus Magazine because that's where we will having those discussions. Thank you both so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we all know it's the end of November, which also means that the next examination period is approaching fast. Here's a study tip to end this EMTV with.
Ancestors, hear my plea. I have exams and I did not study. It would be nice to get at least a B, but please bring passing to us all.
Thank you all for watching. EMTV will be back in 2 weeks. Fortunately, you never have to miss us, because on erasmusmagazine.nl we publish plenty of good stuff in the meantime.